Hey, we're talking about last pass on soybeans, that thing you do, that very last thing you do to salvage or produce great big yields. That's what we're talking about here at Temple Rhodes and our friend from AgXplore.
Welcome to Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. More than just a podcast, it's the place for insights and information you can apply immediately to your farming operation for increased success. This episode of Cutting the Curve is brought to you by AgXplore, with innovative products that improve fertilizer efficiency, protect yield potential, and reduce stress. AgXplore helps growers maximize field potential. Find out how AgXplore can help you get more out of your crop at agxplore.com. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Well, greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve. We're talking about the last pass on soybeans in particular. Temple is doing quite a bit of work with products from AgXplore. We've got Adrian Boyd, who is a sales agronomist for AgXplore. We're talking about that, particularly as it relates to soybeans. But Temple does also use, and he's got even trials going on corn with AgX products, and he also has used it on wheat. So let's talk about the soybeans, because that's what Adrian mostly was excited about, and I would think that we want to get to that. So here it is. We're recording this the first week of August. Take me from here, what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and what the results you think you're going to see.
So I've been lucky enough to, work with AgXplore for now. This is my second year, and I've come to like a bunch of their products. Last year, I took a full dive into their portfolio, and I got to use a lot of it, and I put a lot of it on all of my acres. Well, one of the things that I've been doing for years is, going back in late season, after R4 and soybeans, and we'll put a heavy load in there with a bunch of different products, and we're driving yield, and we've obtained big yields in corn, soybeans, and wheat. But I guess I'm kind of been a little bit of a soybean guy per se. I don't know why I get labeled like that, but I've done fairly decent in this, and it's actually spun off in our irrigated acres instead of me just trialing and getting some response. This late season pass at this R4.5 to R5, which everybody else have taken off and gone to the beach, it's become part of my standard practice, and I can go right through, exactly what we use, why we use it, and all of that.
All right. So at R5, you think most people decide, man, it's done. Here we are. We're only a month, 5 weeks out, 5 weeks, maybe 6.
I mean, you got 6 weeks probably, but I mean, like I said, we're in that between R4 and R5, and most people make that pass at they'll do like maybe a PGR, fungicide, and insecticide. Some do a micro pack, some don't do a micro pack at that R2 to 3, and after that's done, that's it. They're they're going to ride it out.
All right. So I want to hear what you put on, but I also want to hear from the agronomist here. Is he waiting too late? Is he doing, we call him, he's one of the Syndit twins with Chad Henderson. He never met a product or a pass he didn't think that you should go ahead and do. So is he overdoing it, Adrian?
Well, I think, when we start talking about PGRs, what we're looking at is extending that grain field period. Temple's probably pushing things a little bit more than what some guys are. We're running a lot of that PGR in that R3 period, but what we're trying to do is extend that grain field. So, what Temple's saying is correct in that a lot of guys are giving up on that maybe too late. And, if we're trying to extend that grain field, we're looking at more nutrient uptake, pushing that plant and trying to increase yield, see a return on our investment that we're putting out there with these PGRs. So, there's opportunity there for sure to continue to push those beans. Maybe when we're, some guys have already kind of finished out for the year.
Well, he called it R4.5 to R5. I think he was sort of like maybe a little embarrassed to say he's going out there at R5 because people are like, what in the hell is he wasting his money doing that for? But the reality is it must be paying off. He's set records and he gets big, Temple gets big yields. So I don't think this is all just some, silly activity. It's working. So answer me this. The stuff you're putting on in this last pass, which is going to be here pretty soon, is going to be what?
So we're going to add Octane, which is their sugar product. We're going to add their PGR, which is Onward Max, which is a reproductive PGR. One of the things that
The
let me
person
just go
for
back.
the person that's tuned into this episode for the first time that they've ever been on Extreme Ag, PGR equals plant growth regulator. And
Yep.
I never even knew what that was till I started working with Extreme Ag a couple of years ago. Why would you want to regulate the growth of a plant when it's trying to get down the home stretch? Just curious.
It really should be called a plant growth stimulator, to be honest with you. It shouldn't be called a regulator because it doesn't really regulate things. So let me just tell you why I do each one of these products, and I'll go through each one of the products. So one, I'm using the sugar. Sugar drives energy, right?
Yep.
But when we talk about the Onward Max, their PGR, when you put a PGR on there, it's plant growth hormones, and you're giving it something, and you're kind of making that plant do something at that point that it normally wouldn't do. So you're creating a reaction, and you're stimulating this response, and then you got to be willing to do a bunch of the other stuff, with putting some high phosphorus, their charge product. It's a high phosphorus blend of micro. And when you add all these things together, Strike NXT, which is a potassium acetate, it's got humics in it. When you do all these things together, it adds to the weight. But when you put Onward Max in there, their PGR, plant growth regulator, you can actually make that plant rebloom again at the growth point. And when you can do that.
And wait, real quickly, Adrian, why do I want that to bloom a second time?
Well, I mean, more blooms equals more fruit, and more fruit equals more yield. So, and like Temple's saying there, and trying to influence, I mean, we're trying to generate weight, as much weight as we can, because at the end of the day, weight's what we're selling.
Yeah. You're selling pounds. Everybody talks about bushels. We're selling pounds on the truck. So are those blooms, the second ones that he gets by using the Onward Max, are they going to time out? I mean, in other words, do they catch up with everything else, or are they behind? I mean, are they still green when the other stuff's drying down? Or, I mean, it just seems like it's a little bit off cycle.
Well, it goes back into what he's saying about trying to push that plant. I mean, you want to keep that plant healthy, happy. What we're trying to do with some of the products, with something like a charge, high phosphorus micro pack, we're trying to keep the gas pedal pushed on that thing. We're wanting, it's got a nice root system on it for a reason. We're not trying to replace soil fertility. We're trying to push the gas pedal on that thing for it to finish out just as strong as it can.
So I guess my question is it off cycle, and does it end up catching up? And you're pretty much saying, yeah, it'll be just fine.
Yeah, you may not turn every one of those blooms into a harvestable pod,
right?
But you're definitely increasing the chances versus not using something like a PGR. And it was interesting when I came on with AgXplore and PG, talking about a PGR because we were in the South. A lot of guys referenced that to cotton, and just a lot of education around some of these products. Because people, automatically think, yeah, I've got some tall beans, let me spray them with a PGR, and that's not what we're trying to influence here at all. We're trying to trick that plant into going from a vegetative mode into really pushing its energy into reproductive.
Yeah, and that is, by the way, I mean, Kelly spoke about that, and at least more than a year ago about the PGRs. He does want his beans to not become 6 foot tall, because then they fall over and all that. So plant growth regulator does actually do regulation, and I think you should speak to it, Adrian. Also, what I've learned with you guys is there's two kinds of plant growth regulator. There's a kind to be used during a vegetative cycle. There's a time to be used during the reproductive cycle of the plant. And if you mix those up, you're going to do yourself some harm.
That's correct. Yeah, you're looking at some of the percentages of the product that we've got in each one of those. Stimulating root and shoot growth is what we're looking at trying to achieve early on in the season, whether we're putting something, in furrow or over the top and maybe a post herbicide. Mm-hmm. And in late season, we're looking at a different blend of some of those choline chlorides and different products that we've got in there. Then to what Temple was speaking about a minute ago, we're trying to influence that plant to do something that it typically or create a indicator in there that it typically wouldn't do, that's going to, influence the yield.
Temple Rhodes, you said octane, which is a sugar. You do that for energy to make sure that the plant finishes out strong, I think is what you were saying. Onward Max is, you call it plant growth regulator, which is really a plant growth stimulant. And that's because it gives you a second set of blooms, which can then become flowers, which become then pods, which become beans, which become weight. And then Upward, what's the product Upward do for you? Why do you put it?
So Upward is, it's 3 products mixed together. It's their Inferno product, which Inferno is a humic fulvic mix. Octane is already in that mix too, and it's Prevent XT. Prevent XT is a phosphorus solubilizer. You got it.
It's a what? Wait, wait. Let's let Adrian. What in the hell did he just say?
Solubilizer.
Solubilizer.
Yes. Solubilizer. Yes.
Solubilizer. By the way, Temple's a good talker, but he has a few little things he stumbles with. Apparently, solubilizer and then the word water. He still calls it water.
Yeah, it's water.
Water.
It's
hey, we're out here in the Chesapeake Bay. There's water everywhere. They're like, there's what? There's people wording us? There's water. Anyway,
yeah, it's water.
What's a solubilizer do, Adrian?
So what we're doing in that is either freeing up phosphorus that we've got in the soil, or creating a particle there that's going to bind up some of those charges in the soil to allow phosphorus to be more freely available to the plant. So in season, you're able to free up some of that phosphorus maybe that you've got with higher indexes in the soil.
Okay, and the person that's not as agronomically versed, it's not got the phosphorus in it. It makes the plant get it phosphorus it makes phosphorus more available to the plant that's in the soil. Is that
more valuable, more efficient? What you're putting, even in products that you're applying, it's making it P more available to the plant, more efficient.
Isn't one of the things that we've learned, between the algae blooms in Lake Erie and the overusage of phosphates, isn't that kind of one of the things in the last 10 years we've discovered? We might have enough phosphates in many cases there. It's just making them available. Isn't that kind of is that the gist of this product?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think there's a lot of room with these products to be definitely more efficient with driving them in the plant. And as we learn about that, then I think, we can help growers to be more mindful or more understanding in how they could use some of these products to maybe tweak some of the rates on what they're using and get that maybe a higher percentage of what they're putting in the soil actually in the plant.
Yeah.
Versus, building high P levels and then erosion and things like that, where we run into some issues with water quality.
So Temple, we got the octane sugar, we got the Onward Max plant growth stimulant regulator, we got the Upward, which is a humic and a fulvic. It's also got some of the elements of octane in it, which is more sugar, and it's also got the solubilizer, which helps make stuff more available, particularly P. Is there anything else?
We'll generally use the Upward up front, in the beginning edge, where we can drive a bunch of that stuff into the plant. Mainly what we're doing on our next pass is sugar, octane. The last pass is a sugar for energy, which is their octane product, a PGR, which is Onward Max, because it's a reproductive PGR. We'll use Inferno because it's a humic fulvic blend. It'll help get things into the plant. We'll use a high phosphorus micro pack, which is theirs. It's called Charge. That's one I use on everything. The reason that we're trying to use a high phosphorus in there, 2 things. 75% of the crop's needs for phosphorus are in the reproductive stages, and we don't have enough at the end. And that's one thing that we're thinking that is driving a lot of yield, is trying to put a high phos micro pack in the end, because they're so efficient. We can drive them into the plant. And the last thing that we put in there is a potassium acetate, which theirs is Strike NXT, their potassium acetate, and it also has some humics and fulvics in there to help kind of buffer a little bit of that salt load that we're going to be putting out there. That's a big help. So that's basically the main components. And then, of course, we're going to put a fungicide in there to keep it healthy. And we're going to put an insecticide in there to keep it healthy.
I
We
understand
don't
the
want
fungicide, I
anything
understand the
sticky.
insecticide. Help me out. Potassium acetate, Adrian, what's the purpose of that?
Potassium, is one of the main drivers in yield. A soybean plant uses a very, I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but it's using a high load of potash during the season. So if we can drive some of that potassium acetate, being the most available form of potassium in a foliar application, to kind of help supplement that, keep it going, and finish strong during the season.
So, Damien, let me just add to what Adrian's saying. So we've looked at years and years past of our own data on our own tissue samples, and whether it's corn, soybeans, wheat, it doesn't matter what it is. There's this big curve where we know the potassium is in the plant, it's in the plant, it's in the plant, and then when you get into the reproductive stages, it's this huge drop off. And when you get into grain fill, it drops way, way low. And the reason is because it's driving that potassium to build that grain, and that grain is going to add more weight. So one of the things that we started adding a bunch of potassium acetate ahead of the curve. So in all of our R stages, when we go across the field, we're putting a Strike NXT in there because we're trying to drive a little more potassium in the plant, a little more potassium in the plant, and it's driving a lot of weight into that plant. So or into that seed. So that's one of the things that we picked up on years and years ago, watching our own data, watching our own tissue samples, and watching what they're trying to do and trying to be proactive, not reactive.
This last pass, which is what, number 4 across the soybeans? Number 3.
Oh, it's quite a few. Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a few.
At least 4.
It's probably more than that, but yes, at least 4.
All right. It may be your 5th. Can you give me an idea on what you're spending per acre?
This particular pass right here that we just talked about last year, Adrian and I got together and we made a visit to Heath Cuttrell down in Chesapeake, Virginia, and we looked at all of his acres, and we decided on to use basically my program on it. And I think we were about $34 an acre. Wasn't that what it was, Adrian? It was about somewhere similar, close to that.
What we were putting into charge, some nitro ultra in there to pick up the micronutrients out of that, and that Strike NXT, which we had to reformulate it a little bit this year to XR5 KSB, which has actually got a higher load of potassium acetate in it, with still picking up the sulfur and boron on that.
So this is 30. And by the way, I didn't hear, does this have micronutrients in it? This last pass? You don't need them.
Well, each one of those, the Charge and the Strike NXT, there's a little bit of things in that as well. There's some micros in it, not a real heavy load. We actually used Nitro Ultra last year, which is their heavy duty micronutrient package. We use that as well in a bunch of these different blends. Where we used it last year on Heath's ground, his soybeans, he picked up, 10, 11 bushels, what he told us. Yeah. So 10, 11 bushels selling them at $12 way outweighed that 30 couple dollars.
Yeah, right. $120 versus $120 of gain, $34 to spend plus some time. All right. So this last pass, you're going to be doing it here soon, R5, and then we covered everything that's in there. Question for you: You're convinced that you are a intensive manager of, say, your soybeans, and there's some people that say, it's just soybeans. I focus on corn. Why wouldn't you? If you can get, it's just like we talked about in a previous recording, it ain't sexy. Okay, soybeans aren't supposed to be sexy. I don't care. Money is sexy. And so if you can get $120 return on a $34 investment, I'm there every day.
I can tell you time and time again, when we make applications to soybeans, and if it's the right application, we can get way bigger return on our investment than we can with corn. If you make up something that's, 2 or 3 bushels in corn, which sometimes is a lot, Well, a lot of these little things that we're picking up here, it's 2 or 3 bushel here, a bushel here. You know, that's a big dollar value when it's $12 versus $7 corn or
Or
$8
$5
corn.
corn.
You know, like last year, or $5 corn. Like
I like soybeans because I'm kind of lazy. I would like the idea that I only have to haul 1/3 as much crap. I mean, I don't have to drive to the grain terminal so often because, I get less stuff per acre and more dollars per bushel. They taught me a long time ago, it's better to make more dollars per hour and work less hours than to make less dollars per hour and work a whole bunch of hours. I think that's when you look at soybeans, is kind of how maybe we should be thinking that way.
I mean, soybeans sometimes are a little bit more drought tolerant. You know, when we're talking about using PGRs in furrow and some of the stuff that we've done with the testing on soybeans in furrow, we can actually build this massive root system that you would never think a soybean plant can actually
Yeah.
make.
Yeah.
And they're way more drought tolerant. They take, as far as on our irrigated acres, they take, I mean, not even 30% of what our corn takes. So, less cost involved in that as well. Like when you're talking about an all over ROI, seems pretty sexy to me.
I'm gonna leave it right there. His name's Temple Rhodes, one of the big cheeses with Extreme Ag. I'm just the host of this episode and all the episodes of Cutting the Curve. If you have not heard and watched them, I encourage you. It's an audio where you get your favorite podcast. It's also a video available at the extremeag.farm site and also on Acres TV. These are free to watch, free to listen to. You can learn and up your farming game. The idea when we called it Cutting the Curve was we're cutting your learning curve, shortening your learning curve to great information to help you make more money on your farming operation. Hundreds of these episodes have been recorded and also hundreds of in-field videos. Guys like Temple shoot. We're very grateful to have business partners like Adrian Boyd come in and share their expertise. He's an agronomist, and he just told you some stuff about growing better soybeans. He's also very tired because he's been running around the field days all day today, and he's been up since 4. It's not just farmers that like to care about what time they wake up. It's also sales agronomists. Anyway, till next time, thanks for being here, Adrian.
Thank you.
All right, and on behalf of Temple Rhodes, I'm Damian Mason with Extreme Ag's Cutting the Curve.
Thanks for listening to another edition of Cutting the Curve. For more insights and information that you can apply to your farming operation, visit extremeag.farm. Are your crops stressed out? AgXplore has you covered with a full line of products designed to reduce crop stress and improve yields. Check out agxplore.com and start protecting your yields and profits.